Welcome again to the December session of Business-Wise Insiders. Before we get started, just a quick overview of what you can expect this morning. First, I'll walk everyone through the presentation. As I said, I'll keep everybody on mute during that portion just to keep disruptions to a minimum. The presentation should last about 20 minutes, and then I'll open it up to questions and discussion. So you'll all have the chance to introduce yourself and ask or share anything that's on your mind about Biz-Dev at the end of 2022. You can also always ask questions in the chat window, and if we can't get to them during the presentation, we'll be sure to discuss them afterward. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than drilling down into one specific topic today, we're going to look back at a handful of ideas, strategies, and trends that we've discussed in our various insiders presentations this year, with the goal of highlighting some of the best Biz-Dev ideas of 2022, and more importantly, how you can use them to create leads and appointments in 2023. So we'll be a little more casual and freewheeling than our usual insider sessions, but I think it'll be a great opportunity to revisit some of the ideas that can have the biggest impact on our success in the coming year. But let's start by taking a step back and giving ourselves a little self-assessment. So think back to the beginning of 2022. Do you remember the goals you set for yourself, and did you meet them? And your goals aren't necessarily about Biz-Dev results. They can and should be as much about your process as they are about outcomes. So in addition to asking yourself, did I close X number of deals this year? Ask yourself, did I do the things that I committed to doing in 2022 to optimize my process for better outcomes? And along those same lines, what did you change about your approach in 2022 that worked or didn't? And have those changes, successes, or failures made you more or less confident in your process heading into 2023? So we're going to look at a few of the ideas that I thought were most helpful that you might be able to apply in 2023. But before I do that, I just want to invite Deborah to offer any introductory thoughts.
Thanks, Sam. I think you're right. When we think about sales, it's so easy for us to focus on the end of the process. Did we close the deal? Do we have a check? Is this a new client? And yet, when we think about the success of most of our sales, it's much more relevant to think about what we do at the beginning. And the things we do right at the beginning tend to give us the best opportunities to close the deals at the end. So I think focusing on this early on part of the process can really make a difference in the outcome.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this as we were preparing for this presentation. A lot of what we do at Insiders is sort of discuss these big ideas and trends, look at specific tactics. And I always worry that it's interesting at a sort of intellectual level, but there's not enough practical takeaway for how you can actually make changes to your process to set you up for success. So a lot of what we'll look at today is specific process changes that you might want to consider that can actually strengthen the process and lead to better outcomes. So I wanted to start our best of 2022 review with an idea that we've talked about a lot in recent years, and that's the importance of bringing value to every prospect interaction. But the question of how to provide value is a really hard one to answer, and that's where our first big idea from 2022 comes in. You need a clear plan to help you find and grow your authority. So let's just be clear about what we mean by authority. When we say authority, we're talking about the principle of authority as defined by Dr. Robert Cialdini in his book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And he says that the principle of authority holds that people follow the lead of credible, knowledgeable experts. So here our wise guys, owls, are explaining the implicit transaction. The offer is, I have knowledge and expertise in an area that you care about. And the natural response is, this person knows what they're talking about, and I should listen to what they have to say. So how do you find and grow the authority that will give your prospects a reason to engage, meet, and do business with you? And the first and really important step is to recognize that you are likely already an authority on topics that your prospect really cares about and would really benefit from knowing, but doesn't know them yet. So start there with what you already know, because those insights, ideas, and experiences are ready-made value delivery systems that you can use to entice your prospects. So ask yourself, what do I know that my prospect doesn't? What do I know that will change my prospect's perspective on their own business and shape their future decisions? And then next 2 slides are some specific questions that will help you home in on the kinds of valuable knowledge that you likely already have. So here, think about what has changed in your prospects industry over the past 1, 3, or 5 years. And this is something that, as somebody who works with multiple clients in given industries, that you likely have a lot of insights into. Is there new technology emerging in your prospects industry? And what stories can you tell about how you've helped clients navigate those technological transitions in the past? Are there new barriers to success in the industry? What are you seeing with your current clients in that regard? And then where are the trends pointing, and what does that mean for achieving success in the future? And then now the same question, but this time for your own industry. What has changed in your industry over the past 1, 3, or 5 years that your prospect might not know about? Is there new technology that you're using to help clients? An example from our own experience that we'll talk about a little bit later is the advent of automated email prospecting campaigns that lead to more consistent and successful lead gen with less effort on the part of our clients. That's something that we didn't offer 6 or 7 years ago. Again, what obstacles are emerging and how are you advising clients to overcome them? And then finally, I think this is a really instructive question to ask and answer. If you couldn't offer your product, how would you help your prospect? What information can you convey that would lead to better decisions? And it might sound weird, but try writing down the answers to all of these questions. It's a great way to force yourself to articulate what's already in your brain that prospects will benefit from knowing, or areas where you need to learn more to become an even stronger and more compelling authority. And so just a quick takeaway as we close out this section: you already know a lot. You can, of course, always learn more. And then a tip is ask your clients. They can tell you what they're seeing. And then think about what their answers mean for your other clients and prospects, and use those answers to deliver value across the board. Deborah, did you want to add anything here?
I think there's a big difference in telling your clients what you know versus helping them to discover those ideas. And when you can help your prospect through that discovery process, they're going to think it's their idea, and that's really all that they care about.
So moving on to our second big idea from 2022, and this one's another fresh take on an old problem. And of course, the old problem is cold calling, and that cold calling is hard and getting harder. And the new question is, what's the best way to make cold calling work for you in the current B2B landscape, where email and other digital channels play such an outsized role? So first, let's review why you should still cold call in 2022, leading into 2023. So first, cold calling is direct. Unlike email and social selling, cold calling is what we call synchronous. You interact with your prospect in real time, as opposed to asynchronous, where you send a message and then wait for your prospect to reply on his or her timetable. Second, cold calling is far more human than any other prospecting channel, which allows sales reps to play to one of their biggest strengths, which is their interpersonal skills. Third, cold calling builds confidence and combats fear. Successful sales requires human interactions, often uncomfortable ones. And if you limit yourself to the comfort of those asynchronous prospecting methods, you'll never build the confidence you need to offer honest advice to your prospects or clients, to tell them things that they need to hear but may not want to. And then fourth, and most importantly, just like every other prospect technique, it's true that cold calling is destined to fail if you're doing it the wrong way. But if you do it right, it can work just as well or better than other methods, especially in certain situations. And here are a few stats just to back up that last point. 82% of buyers say they have taken a meeting after a conversation started with a cold call. Despite all the reasons why people think cold calling doesn't work, isn't any fun, and isn't worth the effort, still fully 27% of sales reps rate cold calling as very or extremely effective. So 1 out of 4 sales reps still think it really works. And finally, companies that abandon cold calling experience 42% less growth than companies that continue to use cold calling as part of their approach to business development. So let's look at a handful of specific tactics you can use to boost your cold calling results in 2023. So first, and this is one that we talked about last month, is the idea of developing and following a very specific cadence for your cold calling and cold outreach, a clear blueprint for how and when you reach out to your list of your very top prospects. So what might a cold calling cadence look like? It's sort of a calendar with specific action steps based on how and whether your prospect responds that you can plan methodically and execute consistently. So maybe day one is a cold call, and if you don't reach your prospect, you leave a voicemail and follow up with an email. Day three might be another cold call, and then an email with a resource you think they might find helpful, and then you follow up with another cold call. Whatever your plan is, the point is that creating a clear blueprint reduces uncertainty and paralysis, and it guarantees consistency and repetition, which are two of the most critical ingredients to BizDev success over time. And a great way to bring even more focus to your list is to divide into groups and create a rotation. So imagine you had 60 top prospects, divide them into 4 groups of 15, and use that cadence for one group every 4 weeks. So here's another idea: research and experiment with different scripts. You know, we talk a lot about the value or the downside of using a rigid script and which scripts really work or don't. But really, you should focus on your goal to start a conversation with a prospect where you can differentiate yourself by providing value. And there's more than one way to get there. So whatever script you use, it should be one that you can use comfortably and confidently. And the fact of the matter is that you need to try a bunch of different approaches to find the right one for you. So this is just an example of some, scripts on the both sides of different strategies. So you might want to start out with being extremely familiar, starting out with how's your day going. Not everybody will use that, but it works for a lot of people. You can experiment on asking for permission or not asking for permission, just diving into the reason for your call. And then on the right side, think about focusing on their priorities. Typically, when I talk to people like you, they tell me they're focused on X or Y. Which of those is bigger for you? Always prepare for the what do you do question. And there's a number of different ways to answer it, but becoming comfortable with that is a great idea. And then another idea is to ask questions where you're eliciting a yes answer. So are you still the VP of sales? Questions that you know they're going to answer yes to might prime them to continue to answer yes to any additional questions you might have. And not all of these will work for everyone. Some of you may have strong feelings about whether some of these approaches work, and that's fine. The more ideas you consider, the more approaches you try, the more likely you are to find a script that you can deliver confidently from the opening of your call to the voicemail you leave if your prospect doesn't answer. And when it comes to being comfortable and confident, it's really critical to practice. And I know role play is not the most fun idea for a lot of sales reps, but here's a quote from Jason Bay of Outbound Squad that we looked at as part of last month's presentation. And it really frames the idea of role play and practice in a different and thought-provoking way. Sales amateurs practice on prospects. Sales professionals would not dare waste a prospect's time in that way. And some quick practice ideas: try practicing by yourself. Simply repeating your scripts until you can deploy them effortlessly will go a long way toward improving your tonality. Aim to be positive, energetic, and real. Practice with your peers to improve your objection handling skills. And then, of course, make practice harder than the real thing. When your role plays are difficult, your real cold calls will seem easy in comparison. Deborah, did you have anything to close out this section?
Well, you all know that I am a big believer in role play, only because I see the difference that it makes in the quality of the calls. Recognizing that it's not fun, but if you create the right environment, it works really well. And it's much harder to get those repetitive calls in when you're doing cold calling today, because fewer people are answering the phone. So unless you have some outside of that calling time practice, even experienced people can get rusty. So I can't say enough how much value role playing can have in improving your calling techniques.
That's a great point. Thanks, Deb. So our third big idea of 2022 is sort of an extension on the last one, where we asked about how sales reps can make cold calling work in today's multi-channel biz dev landscape. And of course, You could simply pick a channel that you've used before, whether it's cold calling or email, or that's easy and comfortable for you. You cold call when you feel like it, you email when you feel like it, you sort of let the chips fall where they may. Or you could develop and follow a specific recipe for combining the various tools in your toolbox to become a more efficient and effective sales prospector. So first, a quick note about the importance of having a multi-channel cadence. According to SalesLoft, response rates are 77% lower for prospecting cadences that use only email and 91% lower for prospecting cadences that use only cold calls when compared with multi-channel cadences. So if you're only using the phone, if you're only using email, you're getting only a fraction of the responses that you'd be getting with a multi-channel approach. Now, there are a lot of variables here, from how many channels you use, the length and frequency of the touches in your cadence, but it can't be overstated how important it is to use more than one channel. So step one is to diversify, use more than one. Then step two is to be strategic in how you use and combine those tools, because each has a different strength and a different role. And while I've listed some of those tools and strengths on the right side of the slide, I wanted to put a spotlight on email and talk through a specific example some of you may already be familiar with of how automated email prospecting can help you reframe and rejuvenate your approach to cold prospecting. So just a quick overview. Automated email prospecting, we call it AEP, is the automation tool available to BeWise users. Here's an example of a typical campaign we manage for clients. We develop a series of 3 messages, an initial message and 2 follow-ups, and whenever a prospect replies, the sequence stops for that individual prospect. So each prospect, and you can see it down here at the bottom right, receives all 3 messages over the course of a few weeks, with intervals of up to a week between messages, but new prospects are added only gradually. So maybe 100 new prospects a day, so that the campaign runs over several months. And the idea is that AEP is sort of running in the background without you having to do anything, delivering replies gradually to your inbox as long as the campaign is active. So what are the implications of having a campaign like that running in the background when you have a cadence that also includes cold calling? So many of you have probably seen this in presentations earlier this year, but imagine you have an AEP campaign running here on the top with a target market of several thousand prospects. Maybe that list is based on firmographic criteria like industry, size, et cetera. So now that you know you're reaching that list of several thousand prospects with an AEP campaign that requires no ongoing effort from you other than fielding responses, you can then use your cold calling time, again, to focus on those top prospects, maybe with a cadence, again, of rotating through 15 prospects every week. And then you can call on those prospects more frequently and more consistently. And that improves your odds of breaking through. So when the alternative is to just cold call randomly through a huge list of lower value prospects less frequently, you can see how an automated strategy running in the background can help make your cold calling time that much more valuable. Because the point is that increasing efficiency is not about figuring out how to prospect without actually doing any work. It means aligning your effort with the potential reward of that prospect, maximizing the odds that your hard work will pay off. And again, this is just sort of a repetition of what I just said, but think about weighting your opportunities. Every opportunity has unique value. So identify it, assign it, rank it, align those efforts, align your more labor-intensive efforts with the higher value opportunities, and then diversify for maximum effect. Use different channels, combine them strategically to make your process more efficient and effective. Deborah, anything to add here?
One of the qualities that salespeople may not have is patience. And business development requires a lot of patience. It's as frustrating as that may be. And it's just so easy to try something and not have super results right away and then give it up because, well, that doesn't work. It does work. It just takes patience.
So that brings us to our final big idea of 2022. With email playing such a central role now in cold B2B outreach, the most successful sales prospectors are masters of the art of the email reply. I'm pretty sure you guys all already know that you need to respond to the leads that come in from your email campaigns, but it's an important point that the most successful reps take it to the next level by developing a well-considered response strategy with tactics that you can deploy in response to whatever kinds of replies your campaign generates. And of course, we're all anticipating the yes replies, It's natural to imagine that prospects will be as excited about your products or services as you are, and to be optimistic about the email that you've worked so hard to craft. But the reality is quite a bit different, and it's really important to calibrate your expectations as you prepare to receive replies, because you're going to receive a lot of less enthusiastic replies that you should still care about and prepare for. So you might be thinking, why should I care about the no's as much as the yeses? Well, the first reason is that pretty much everyone starts off by resisting. And so if you didn't care about the no's, you'd be missing a lot of opportunities to start conversations. The second reason is that, especially with email, every no gives you at least a little bit of information and an opportunity that you can use that to start a conversation. And the information that you get is that your message resonated enough for your prospect to reply, because they don't have to. They can unsubscribe, they can ignore, they can delete. But if they reply and type a message and hit send, that's an indication that they at least skimmed your message enough to understand what you're asking about. Moreover, you now have an opportunity to accomplish a really important objective of cold email outreach, and that's to show your prospect that there's a real live person on the other side. We've talked about conveying your humanness in your emails in presentations, previous insiders presentations, and this is an opportunity to do that. Your prospect's response gives you the chance to start a one-on-one conversation, which is already a lot more promising than where you were when you sent your email or launched your campaign. And more often than not, there's a subtext to a no that you can use to steer the conversation in a positive direction. So let's look at a few different ways that prospects respond and resist over email, and what might be happening beneath the surface. So we can start with the positive response, when a prospect responds with "sure, I'll meet," or something along those lines. And even though this is the kind of response we want, there's still subtext. You better respond quickly, or you could use the opportunity. Next, you have "not interested," which might mean I don't have interest at this exact moment, or a problem that I know of. We already have someone. Everything I know about your services from working with my current vendor. Send more info. I have basic questions, but I haven't thought about what's actually important. Not my decision. I'm the wrong person, but you can use me to connect with the right person. And even I'm out of the office, which gives you a good hook for a personalized email when I get back. So you can see that even these very cursory, not interested style responses might be flipped to provide an opportunity to engage and start a conversation. So I just wanted to give one illustration of how a response strategy can turn what looks like sort of a dead-end opportunity into something that can turn into a conversation, an appointment, and a client. So this is borrowing a couple slides from a presentation we did a couple months ago on real-world email replies and how to turn them into opportunities. This is an example of how to turn around the "we already have someone" reply. So the first reply here is the initial one from the prospect that was generated by an AEP campaign, and the second is the next email we received from the prospect after our sales rep replied. So you can see this is obviously a 180-degree turn. And the thing I love about it is that both emails are super short. He says no, and then a reply after a rep replies, he basically says yes. So let's look at that reply from Scott, which has a little bit of everything. So you can see it starts here with a really good use of personalization. Says he took a look at his website and mentions some specific information that he gathered from that website. Next, he pivots to pointed questions about what it means that the prospect has a system. Do you mean you already have this and a source of prospecting data in your business development efforts, or what do you mean? Next, he demonstrates honesty and professionalism by acknowledging that business-wise may not be the right fit, but that may be worth learning a little bit more about areas where we could help. And then he closes on a very courteous note. And in this case, it clearly worked. But we should also be honest with ourselves and recognize that it doesn't always work out this smoothly. Still, it's clearly worth the effort and can move the conversation forward, even if it doesn't immediately result in a change of heart and an appointment. And I think the other area where we need to be honest is that clearly we want to get people to raise their hands in the first place as our primary goal. And having a response strategy is not going to turn an unsuccessful campaign into a successful one. But as sales reps, what we're trying to do is squeeze as much out of every possible opportunity as we can. And if we ignore the opportunities presented by all types of replies, we're ignoring a potential source of appointments, conversations, and clients. Deborah, do you have anything you wanted to add here?
Well, I think we also have to congratulate Scott that not only did he get this meeting, but he also got a new client from it. So that's a real bonus. I think what is so valuable here is that Scott looked at this opportunity and realized that this was a really important opportunity for him. It was the right kind of prospect that he knew we could help, and took the trouble to write such a personal and interesting reply. And as you say, Sam, that doesn't always work, but when it does, it sure is fun.
Well, thank you everybody for attending and bearing with us through the presentation. Hopefully these, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, provide some specific actionable ideas and tactics that you might want to consider incorporating into your process for next year. But with that, I'm going to open it up to discussion, and hopefully we can talk through some of the ideas that you discovered in 2022 and come up with an even more robust set of ideas to consider as we move into 2023. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll take everybody off mute.